Hello and welcome everybody to Avoiding a Breach: How Automated Identity Intelligence is Changing the Cybersecurity Game. As the threat landscape accelerates, identity has emerged as the most critical and most targeted security parameter. On today's webinar, we are exploring how automated identity intelligence is reshaping cybersecurity strategy and helping leading organizations stay one step ahead of breaches. It's going to be a fireside chat style session today with two industry powerhouses from Sphere and CyberArk, who together will unpack the latest trends, tools, and tactics in identity hygiene and PAM, or privileged access management. They're going to be sharing real world use cases and firsthand insights, show you how to uncover identity risk, reduce exposure, and move from chaos to compliance without slowing down your business. As you can tell, we have a lot to cover today, and I cannot wait to get started. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of housekeeping with you all today, and then we're going to get our speakers out here with us. First and foremost, introductions are in order. My name is Mackenzie Putici. I'm your moderator here for today's session from Actual Tech Media, a future B2B company, and it's exciting to have you all in the house today. I've seen a bunch of highs, hellos, good mornings, hello from California, Texas, and so on over in the chat tab there. Now, if you haven't yet found the chat tab, feel free to pop over there on the right-hand side of your audience console and drop a quick hi, hello. I've seen bonjour already in there, aloha, hola, however you want to say hi, and spread some energy and excitement around to the rest of your community here on live with you today. Got hello from Toronto, exciting stuff. We've got Arkansas, I believe. All right, excellent, everybody. Now, if you do have any technical issues, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. This is also the best place where you can hop in and let us know. A quick browser refresh does usually free up any glitches or tech gremlins coming to bug you. But of course, we're going to be there to help out if you need anything at all. Deanna, who's our webinar coordinator, pulling all the puppet strings in the background, will be there in assistance as well as myself. So feel free to pop in there with any needs. Aside from that, any sort of comments, feedback, exciting things you hear that you want to make a mention of, throw that in the chat. Now, if you do want to ask a question and get an answer, we don't want those to get lost in the flurry of all the chats, the highs and hellos. So please do use the Q&A tab, just a couple spots over there. That is where we'll be able to answer some questions. We do have some live Q&A, and our speakers are going to be responding live depending on the flow and what comes up when. But we also have some assistants back of house to answer some questions on live chat as well. So lots of time and energy to make sure you get all the information you're looking for. Now, we also do have in the docs section the ebook promised when you signed up for this webinar and the white paper there. So definitely check that out. Definitely worth your while. So thanks for showing up for that. And we also do have our prize terms and conditions. So you might have seen it up here on the screen. We do have a $250 Amazon gift card up for grabs. You do need to be live and present for the duration of today's session to qualify for that prize and meet those full T's and C's if you want to check those out in that tab. And with that, I think we've covered everything. So let's get our speakers up on out here with us to start the show, shall we? We have Rita Gurevich, the CEO of Sphere, joining us today, as well as Brandon Traffanstedt, who is the field CTO over at CyberArk. Rita, Brandon, welcome to the stage, you two.
Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you both doing today?
Better now that we're here.
Fantastic. Like George, I am also alive and present, but I was just told that I am not eligible for the gift card. So I might need to rethink things. But hey, everybody, thank you for having me.
An absolute pleasure. Well, I'm going to step off. I'll join you for some Q&A and wrap up at the end. But with that, Rita, I'll pass things over to you. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First off, I'm so excited, BT, to be doing this webinar with you. You were one of the first thought leaders at CyberArk that I met years ago, and I was just blown away by your knowledge, and you're also just such a great guy all around. So thank you for spending time with me and this fairly large virtual audience that joined us today. And if you don't mind, I thought we might kick it off with a question for you. So did meet a number of years ago, BT, but how has the identity landscape changed? But maybe also what stayed consistent?
First of all, Rita, I appreciate the kind words. Right back at you. And I've loved watching the partnership between Sphere and CyberArk grow. So thank you for that too. I will tell you a couple of things have changed since we met. You might not be able to tell, but I've actually gotten more gray hair, not because of you, but generally because of the identity landscape, I feel like, and other things. But one of the biggest shifts have been simply the scope and scale of identities, specifically powerful identities. Used to be we would focus our security controls in on these very specific cohorts in IT, right? Domain admins, as an example. But then more of our workforce got powerful access and started being compromised. We then saw more machines coming into the mix, whether it's more traditional service accounts or even AI agents coming into the mix as well. So long, rambly story short, we have seen an exponential boom of identities. The other thing that I'll share there is there's one thing that people like more than humidity, and I know a lot of us on the East Coast are suffering with that, and that thing is statistics. I think that's everyone's favorite thing. Every year, CyberArk runs what we call the Identity Security Landscape Report, where we talk to 2,500 companies across the globe, and we ask them, did you experience an identity-related incident this year? And 13% of them said, yeah, we experienced one. And I know what y'all are thinking. Like, oh, one, that's pretty good. 13% with one. The problem is that the other 87% said they experienced at least two. So 100% of the 2,500 orgs we talked to experienced at least one identity-related ouchie. So identity is at the center of all the programs, all the potential risk, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to match this exponential explosion of identity with things like automation and intelligence. And I know a lot of what you talk about is identity intelligence. So maybe explain a little bit more about what that means.
I would love to, BT. Identity intelligence, what is it, right? So it's really about having clear, constantly updated understanding of who has access to what, including privileged access, and whether that access actually makes sense. It brings together things like account discovery, ownership mapping, and usage patterns, so that way you can spot the risks quickly, especially around sensitive and elevated accounts. So the goal is to really help security teams make smarter, faster decisions by giving them the full picture of identities, the access that they have, and really where controls need to be tightened. That's what identity intelligence is.
Amazing. And I think to your point, it's incorporating more proactive controlling. It's also finding the right people to help out, and then doing what we've seen many of our development sort of counterparts do, and that is automating things like response, which is actually something you talked about at CyberArk's Impact event. So Rita, not only were y'all awesome and were a sponsor of our annual customer event, but you actually came yourself. And I remember peeking in the room of the session you gave, because that's the only way I could get in, just sort of barely open the door. And in that session, you sort of bridged identity intelligence with this broader concept of identity hygiene. How do those kind of go together?
It's a great question. And we've been using the term identity hygiene for a while now, even describing our solution Sphere Board as an identity hygiene platform. And we're really proud of that term. And we actually brought that term to market. And if you don't believe me, ask ChatGPT. But what we realized is identity hygiene is the outcome, and identity intelligence is the most important step to get you there. So we talked a minute ago about what identity intelligence is, knowing everything that you need to know about your identities. And when we say that a company has strong identity hygiene, it means that they're keeping their identity landscape clean. And that's achieved by finding and fixing identity risks and putting in place the right processes to prevent security incidents. Identity hygiene also means that you have solid records of everything that exists, that unnecessary or outdated accounts are removed, that orphaned accounts have been reunited with their rightful parents, and that you've secured and protected everything that needs it. And identity related risks are continuously monitored and addressed. And we believe identity hygiene is a beautiful thing.
Well said. And part of the beauty, I think, Rita, is there's the technology, which I think you'll talk about a little bit, right? We both work for technology companies. Of course, we want to throw tech at things. I used to be an engineer. I think I still play as an engineer a lot today. So my brain immediately goes to bright lights and shiny buttons. But if you take that combination of more identities, you take that and add the variable of more environments, multiply it by the ever increasing number that we see, which, by the way, year over year, identities tend to double these days. There has to be a process and a prioritization element to it as well. It's not just throwing cool tech at it. It's also making sure that either A, we have, well, processes in place and chat with folks to make sure we're prioritizing based on risk, but B, that same technology helps us build better priorities. And sort of speaking of that sort of whole broad identity hygiene landscape, I would love it, and I imagine the audience would love it, if maybe you dove a little bit deeper into some of the content you shared as part of that presentation and impact as it relates to, I'll call it operationalizing identity hygiene.
I would love to. So before I get into it, when I did the slides at Impact, I had some fun with it, and I took a risk, and I went with this whole hoarders theme, and I tested out some new jokes, and I'd say most landed well, and I got some chuckles. So let's see if it works virtually. Although I can't see the participants, so I can only hope that they don't think I'm a total cheese ball. But you've seen the show Hoarders, right?
Yes.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's where someone has let things pile up for years and years and years, and now every room is just full of stuff that they can't even recognize. And alongside, inside, and all around all this stuff is family heirlooms and keys to the Cadillac in the garage and expensive jewelry and maybe even cash lying around in random places. And I always say
that
like,
is not what I saw in Hoarders, by the way, Rita. Like that sounds like the premium episode of Hoarders. Like when I was binging it during COVID, it was like a much different landscape. But sorry for interrupting you there. It's just your picture of Hoarders is like this beautiful, pristine place, but it's like a museum. The version that you have
on a disease. But it is interesting, you know, because I kind of think about what people are dealing with identity is very similar to what people deal with hoarders. And I always say, like, welcome to the world of identity hygiene, right? Because your environment could be just as cluttered as that house we saw on TV. And, you know, instead of stacks of newspapers, we have orphaned accounts. And instead of broken appliances, we have high risk entitlements with no owners. And just like a hoarder, you don't really know what you have until you start digging. So I'm going to share a couple slides here for us. And I'm going to start with the discovery process. And I'm going to walk through 6 important steps to discovery, and small plug for Sphere Board, because anybody who wants to know how to automate this, I'm sure there's going to be a very well-crafted marketing email to follow where you can learn more about exactly how our technology does this. But let's get into it, right? So back to hoarders. Before we start throwing everything out in the dumpster, we have to figure out what's actually valuable and what's important. And inside a hoarder's house, you don't just start throwing everything away, because you might actually, unfortunately, throw out something that's important, like that mansion's priceless heirloom, or that, you know, envelope full of cash that probably never exists. But the same goes for identity hygiene. You have to identify what truly matters. Maybe it's privileged accounts, your crown jewels. Those need to be locked up and guarded. Maybe it's local accounts, and that's like your hidden trap door and easy to miss, but it might lead to something very important. Then there's shared accounts, and that's like the mystery box in the attic. Who even knows who owns this thing, right? And there's service accounts, and those are like the utilities that keep everything running. If you ignore them, your whole house falls apart. And then sometimes you even have scenarios where you have primary accounts acting like service accounts, and that's like using grandma's fine china for takeout, and that's not how it was meant to be used. And the truth is, at the kind of root of all of this is, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're either going to waste time sorting through junk, or worse, you're going to accidentally throw something out that's critical. So we have to make sure we pay attention to what matters most. And when we're collecting account information, we're also collecting key metadata about those accounts. This is going to be really helpful in the coming discovery steps we're going to walk through. But things like, when was the password last changed on the account? When was it created or modified? Also collecting from CyberArk to know which accounts are properly secured, which also later is going to be used to tell us which aren't. All of this metadata is like food for our algorithms, and we use all of it. We're going to show you how in a minute. And I'm sure, BT, from when you start talking to customers, is this the first step that you take as well when you think about how do we even wrap our heads around all of this?
Absolutely, Rita. We have to know what's out there in order to take action. And what we may find is that we prioritize based on, it could be an audit finding, it could be perceived risk, heaven forbid. It could be because we're responding to a compelling incident, but we need a picture. In a lot of cases, we begin executing before we see the entire picture, and that's okay sometimes, but we have to return to finish out what's left on the easel. As an example, you may have noticed, those of you watching, that I probably reacted when Rita said service accounts. I cannot tell you how often we see these very mature, interactive access management programs, humans, but service accounts haven't been touched because we're afraid that we didn't find them all or that we might break something, but threat actors tend to know that. The other thing, Rita, I'll underline there is, it's not just about securing and measuring your environment. It's about securing and measuring the security tools and controls you put into your environment, which is one of the reasons why I'm so bullish about Spear's ability to actually go into CyberArk and show you more information about your maturity, as well as help with identity hygiene outside of platforms like ours.
That was awesome, BT. I really appreciate that. And, you know, it is very important to know what you're looking for, but a lot of times people ask us, where should I look for it, right? You maybe have a general understanding service accounts are important, but how the heck do we find them all, right? And by finding it, you're actually also going to learn about the entitlements of all these identities, which is a very important piece of the puzzle. So going back to hoarders, hopefully my jokes are landing virtually, but imagine, and I'm going to use a mansion in this example, BT. So imagine you, BT, inherited an old mansion filled with rooms, closets, hidden compartments, but somewhere there's a treasure chest. Where do you start looking? Do you go into the AD basement? You like that one, right? It's dark, it's damp, it's filled with things that you probably forgot existed. Or here's another one for you. Maybe the Entra attic. Ah, shiny and new, but also cluttered with all that junk that wasn't migrated properly, or the Unix storage shed full of things that someone swears are important, but no one actually understands. You have to go through all these foundational systems, both on-prem and in the cloud. You have to look everywhere. And then there's the map, the referential data sources. In our identity hygiene use case, I'm talking about your CMDB, your books of record that are supposed to tell you where everything is. But guess what? Some maps say different things about the same room. Some maps are old and don't reflect what's there today. And some maps just don't tell the whole story. So not only do you have to search everywhere, but you also have to cross-check all those conflicting lists just to make sure you're looking in the right place. And by the way, identity hygiene will allow you to create an accurate map once and for all. And this is only 2 of the 6 steps. So I'm going to pause there because I'm going to talk about, is this everything? But these are scopes that have been out there for a while, right? Like these sins of our past continue to haunt people.
And we're adding more, right? Going back to the mental image, by the way, I've pictured myself now going through this mansion I've inherited and pulling every single candelabra to see which one will actually open the secret door to the treasure chest. But the mansion is growing, right? We see more candelabras, right? We still have all of these environments, but your identities are increasing, the resources, the infrastructure itself is increasing, and likely your scope is increasing too. Maybe you're now having a hybrid deployment, whereas you used to be in a physical data center. So we have to now look at it in the lens of the attic. Maybe you have another level of attic on top of said attic. I feel like this mansion is becoming like from The Sims, I feel like. But really the scope is going to continue to increase for the amount of time that we might not do anything. So things become imbalanced. So we've got to start soon versus waiting for there to be a broader map to be built.
And there's a lot of places to look, right? And oftentimes CISOs say to us, I need confidence that I found everything. I have to be able to say, I know 100% of my universe. So how do you know you've got everything? And so often, just when you think you found it all, you lift up that old couch cushion and surprise, there's more. Have we truly uncovered everything? Do we have an inventory of all accounts, of all policies, of all roles and entitlements across our systems? And I'd say we probably got a good start, but there's more to consider. Are we looking deep and wide or just scratching the surface? So let's go back to a little fun example as it relates to hoarders, okay? So think about it. You're envisioning this, right, BT? You're putting yourself in the show. You're opening a box, right? And inside that box is another box. And inside that box, more boxes. And eventually you find a shoebox full of keys. Because in the world of identity, things are not just lying around in plain sight. Oh no, they're hidden inside layers upon layers of access structures, like those nesting dolls or a set of boxes inside of boxes. Direct access, easy-ish. That's like finding something sitting on a table. But what if there's a user in a group? Okay, now it's in a box. What about a group inside another group? Now that box is inside another box. And what if that group is inside yet another group? And now you've entered the inception of identity management. And at this point, it's not just about knowing who has access. It's about understanding how they got it. And believe it or not, right now, we're only halfway through the discovery process. But here's where we're at. We know what we need to find. We know where we need to look. And we have confidence that we've searched far and wide. So now what I like to say is we're going to shift from basic discovery to intelligent discovery. Are you excited, BT?
I am.
Awesome. So how do I wrap my head around all of this? How do we turn chaos into clarity, right? We've uncovered the mess, but how do we actually make sense of all of it? So think about that hoarder's example again. Right now, it's like we've just dumped everything out of the hoarder's house into a giant pile, and we need a system to get organized. So how do we do that, right? We're going to first start by categorizing things. What kind of account is it? And think of that like labeling storage bins. This one's for our favorite service accounts. This one's for your local database accounts. And labeling and grouping helps bring structure to the chaos. And then comes classification. How risky is this account? Because not all accounts are created equal. Some are harmless, like that old stack of magazines, while others are like ticking time bombs waiting to cause a disaster. And classifying accounts with risk tiers, that's really what begins the clarity journey. So one quick example for you. High risk account, maybe the built-in administrator or any local admin group member. It has full system control. It's frequently targeted for lateral movement. It may be unmanaged or shared. And it becomes even riskier if it's not vaulted or monitored by CyberArk. And it's a known exploit path if it's not renamed or disabled. High risk account. But then you also have some low risk accounts out there too. A domain user from an HR team member. No elevated privileges, only has access to standard apps. You clearly see them in all your identity lifecycle tooling, no signs of abnormal activity. Cool. there's different types that require different mindsets and different thought tracks. But this is all going to help you get organized, bringing risk and type into the clearer picture. So you can say things like, here are my high risk service accounts. This is like a gas leak in the basement. Got to fix it immediately. But guess what? Here are some low risk shared accounts. Each of these are going to drive different priorities and likely will be remediated in different ways. But if we don't take these steps, we're just staring at a bunch of stuff. So I'm curious, BT, what do you think about this? Is this an approach that you think makes sense?
Not only does it make sense, it's a necessity. We have to know where to start, and that no can't just be a gut feeling. It needs to be based on not only what we know about our environment, but what other elements of security intelligence might tell us, what other frameworks might guide us to do. Without that, to your point, we're just kind of twirling around, not necessarily making progress to reduce risk, but instead focusing on coverage. Risk reduction and coverage, two very, very different things. They can align, they don't always align.
Awesome. And I have two more to go. I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. But the next obvious, or maybe not so obvious question is, what are my problems? Is there structural damage beneath all this clutter, right? We've taken millions of things and we've started to make sense of it, and we probably are starting to see real issues. Are our privileged accounts protected? Are our high-risk accounts managed properly? This is the moment when the hoarder goes, oh my gosh, my foundation is cracked. And in identity hygiene, it's when you realize that you have admin accounts out there with no owner, where you have service accounts with full domain privileges, where you have credentials that haven't been changed since Windows XP. And lastly, where do I start? How do we prioritize the cleanup? So at this point, we're overwhelmed, maybe. There's so much to do. Where do we start? A few ideas that you might consider. I like the obvious no-brainers, the accounts that are clearly unnecessary or dangerous. I like the OMG, those high-risk items that we've discovered, the ones that could really bring the house down at any moment. But it could also start with the biggest bang for the buck. So prioritizing based on impact and effort. And before we kind of wrap up this slide, you wouldn't start by organizing your sock drawer in a hoarder's house. You'd clear the exit so you can actually get inside. It's the same with identity hygiene. Tackle the critical risks first and then work your way down. So BT, I think you have a little fun poll to share with us.
Do. So folks, I'm about to expose the poll. Don't worry, it's not a crazy poll or anything like that, but I'll expose it very quickly. What will happen is you will see a little pop-up that says, hey, there's a poll. Feel free to click on that and answer. If you don't want to click the pop-up or you don't see it, you'll notice the poll icon show up between chat and docs, I believe. And yeah, it sure did. So just open the poll. But after hearing about the 6 categories that Rita mentioned, where do you and your organization fall? If you feel comfortable sharing, we'll leave this open, but really want to sort of get your feedback on, are you super wicked mature here and you're just doing us a favor by attending, or is this something that you truly see as a problem? And I've noticed some things in chat around, oh my gosh, I've been spinning my wheels on this for the last 6 months. You're not alone. We'll leave it up though and sort of expose the poll in a little bit. But Rita, one of the things that an old boss of mine used to say is admiring the problem just creates a new problem if you do it too long. Having an inventory, discovering what's going on out there is fantastic. Making sure that there is some prioritization of risk, metadata being ingested, that gives us more potential on how to begin to find a resolution. But I got to ask, how do we turn it from challenge admiration to beginning down the process of remediation? And maybe there are multiple steps that you can share.
So Awesome. And quick story to help me kind of segue here. And I did this live too at Impact because I saw Jeff Hudson in the audience. And if you don't know who Jeff is, and BT, I'm sure you do, he's incredible. He's the CEO of Venafi, now a CyberArk company, and he's the man behind what we all know as machine identity. And I was talking to him, you guessed it, about identity hygiene. That's all I ever talk about. And when we started talking about ownership, mapping a human to the accounts, he told me that he felt ownership is one of the thorniest challenges in identity, and I couldn't agree more. So I definitely want to walk everybody through how to actually figure out who owns what, because we have tons of orphaned accounts lying around that we don't know even how to fix. But I think it's important, before we dive into how to do it, to talk about why it's so important to do this. And first and foremost, there's one major overarching reason why this is so important. And it's, we want to all avoid the oops, we just took down production scenario. If you don't have an accurate owner and you make a change to an account blindly that turns out to be business critical, that's a painful situation to be in. And having the accurate human and owner tied to these accounts, it helps you validate, what does the account do? What systems rely on it? What breaks if you make that change? Super important. Also, ownership provides necessary context for cleanup. Is this service account still in use? Is it legacy? Should this shared account be converted to individual access? The owner has insights that sometimes raw data alone can't provide. And owners also enable risk-based decisions. So if an account is deemed high risk, the owner can assess whether stronger controls are needed, like changing the password more frequently. Without the owner, again, security teams are just guessing, which can lead to over-restricting access, causing disruption, or leaving risk wide open. Owners are also, last very important point, they're the key to ensuring ongoing accountability. Ownership is not just about cleaning up today, it's about maintaining hygiene over time. If no one is responsible, bad practices are going to creep back in and the mess just piles up again. So without account owners, cleanup is like trying to reorganize that hoarder's house without their buy-in. You're either going to break something important or leave dangerous clutter behind, and ownership ensures safe and effective remediation without the chaos. So I'm going to pop right into 4 very interesting steps on how to figure out ownership. So I know this is going to feel complex, but it's okay. We've automated it. Again, my marketing team is going to tell you all about it in follow-up emails. But I want to share with y'all a little bit about what happens under the hood of Sphereboard. How do we actually tag 100% of your accounts with accurate ownership? Well, let's start with step 1. For most of you, this ain't your first rodeo. You've probably had to do some level of certification before, although it probably wasn't full coverage. Maybe you went real deep into a subset of sensitive SOX applications, but then maybe you got stuck. But the truth is, most of you know some owners of some accounts and some assets. And more likely than not, different teams at your company have some of what you need in different places. Maybe some book of records have some ownership. Maybe your IGA has some ownership. There sometimes even exists some decent ownership in Excel spreadsheets lying around on SharePoint sites. But why start from scratch? Bring in that high confidence ownership first into that single catalog that we're building. And that's going to get you about 25% of the way there. And BT, you see tons of organizations across all industries, right? Isn't it surprising to you how disparate this information is across an organization?
I gotta say it's not super surprising. And I think part of it is when we look at beginning to establish ownership, our brains might focus on the people we need to chase down and the troublemakers as an example, but it doesn't have to be that way. Owners can also be advocates that not only help you scale, but help you understand environments, endpoints, and teams that you normally don't interact with. So it's not surprising. What is a happy surprise is more folks are looking at kind of the human aspect of ownership, the positive human aspect, versus the people I need to chase down and yell at because I can't figure out what their service account is doing or why they didn't put in the appropriate metadata.
I love that. A positive spin on taking accountability of what you own and the risk, right? And it's interesting, getting to 25%, by the way, is hard in and of itself, right? But people should feel good that you've started this process, but how do you get further along, right? And what I always tell folks is there are clues in many places, and you can leverage them if you do it smart. For example, you may have a record in your CMDB of applications and what servers host them. Now, if you've done the intelligence discovery process that we talked about before, those steps, those 6 steps, you now understand the relationship between accounts, those nested groups they're members of, the roles they're privy to, and more importantly, to the systems and applications aligned to them. So now you have some clues to work with. And what we've learned is by leveraging these relationships, you can deduce the right owners of the accounts. Like if an account is permissioned across 10 servers and the naming convention is similar, I bet you the account owner is the same as the server owner that you confidently cataloged in your CMDB already. And believe it or not, what we've seen is just these 2 methods alone get you about halfway there. Now, halfway's probably not good enough, but you can handle a big tranche using clues that just already exist within your organization. Isn't that powerful?
There is.
And let's talk about more interesting ways. How do you get now to 75%? So again, you have to take advantage of all the other clues that may not be so easy to correlate, but are highly valuable and have such valid information that's going to lead you to the answer. For example, we see tons of AD properties populated with, I'll just call it stuff. And it's because many of those attributes allow for free-form text. So you have these good Samaritans out there, these good system administrators that wrote a bunch of interesting stuff in different fields, but how do you make sense of that? And that scares people. But oftentimes, by leveraging fuzzy matching in conjunction with all those other methods we already discussed, you're going to get a huge tranche of hits. And finally, this is pretty cool. Your SIM has really interesting information that provides context and information that's very valuable in getting to that last 25% stretch. It's the hardest to figure out, the most obscure, like service accounts. So leveraging logs of what hosts accounts have logged into, coupled with all those prior methods like correlating to server owners from your CMDB, that's really going to complete the picture. And there's a bunch of other tips and tricks and really interesting algorithms that we've embedded into ownership automation. But I could talk about this for days. I really believe that anyone who takes a screenshot of this, you can start working on this today and get significantly further than you were yesterday. So
amazing points, Rita. But with respect to percentages that we have here, I do want to get your feedback on the poll. So we've had it out. I'll share it, and what we see is a perfect bell curve, with the majority of folks sitting in the hey, it's doing okay, pretty good, I'm just getting started realm, but some are either really mature or haven't gotten going yet. So Rita, does that match with generally what you see, right? Most folks sitting in this middle area of there's quite a bit to mature, or there's edge cases to mature. Is that common with your experience?
100%. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't our first rodeo, right? We've probably internally did the easy stuff already. Like we have a good starting point. We generally know what we need to do. But the scope is massive. The places to look are just extraordinarily complicated. These disparate systems are so unique to each other. And that's what makes it hard to go from that 25% and that 50% to that 100%, right? So this is exactly what I expected to see. And I do have that magic 8 ball. I knew this would happen.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I'm very surprised. Actually, someone just voted to try and disrupt the bell curve. Thank you, whoever did that. It's still a very lovely looking bell curve. But Rita, we've looked at we've admired the problem. We have mapped risk to humans. That must make the last piece of remediation like super easy, right? Like easy stuff. Just throw technology at it and you're good, right?
Yeah, I wish I could say that, but the
Try.
truth is, if you're trying to do this a couple of weekend, it's a horrible, horrible life that you live. And we've learned a lot of lessons along the way that we like to talk about, and I'll share a slide in a moment. But I want people to feel good that with the right automation, it doesn't have to be a decade-long project doing a couple of weekend and praying that nothing breaks. Like there's smarter ways of doing this, and you'll see it in that follow-up note that my marketing team's going to share. But let me share some lessons learned, right? This might help people really kind of think about what should I not do? What should I really think about when I'm going to invest time and energy into fixing this problem once and for all? And the first thing I like to talk about is the truth. And just like discovery and ownership, there really is no easy button. Well, not if you do it manually, as I shared earlier. But finding the right owner, communicating with them, tracking it all, it's lots of back and forth, lots of change tickets. Oh my. And the manual approach does require so many of those cross-department handshakes, and mistakes are always made in that game of telephone. And automation is absolutely key here, because otherwise, again, remediation is going to take you decades to get through. And the truth is, too, there's some nuances that we have to be aware of. And again, this is where smart automation comes in. For example, when you onboard a service account, I love talking about service accounts.
I'm glad, so do I.
You really have to understand the dependencies that exist with those service accounts. Is the account running a service on a host? Is it part of an app pool? The devil is in the details. And you should know how to onboard those service dependencies into the vault alongside the account, or poof, problems galore. And again, the only thing worse than breaking a business application is the fact that your project will be stalled indefinitely, and you're going to live through 6 months of shame for all the friction you caused. And that's what we want to make sure people avoid, because they have all the information they need to do this safely and in a scalable way. And the truth is, there is no one size fits all. Maybe new safes need to be created. Maybe accounts need to be added to existing safes. Maybe there's a short-term exception that's needed before password rotation. Or maybe you can at least vault the account in the interim. There's all these scenarios that need to be tracked and managed, and I don't recommend this to anyone who's trying to do this with a spreadsheet. And a couple more interesting points, right? I shared this earlier, and I really believe this. This isn't a one-time project. And anybody who told you that once you're done with remediation and cleanup, that you never have to look back, they straight up lied to you. Because new accounts are created every day, and oftentimes incorrectly. Machines get stood up, accounts are given ungodly rights, right? And heck, we've even seen developers use their personal accounts for like crazy systems access. And you have to just continuously find these policy violations and remediate them. And the good news is, though, there's good news here, right? It's much easier to fix the problem when you found it quickly. The accounts aren't stale yet. The owner finding them, it's a tad easier. And you can nip these issues right in the bud quickly before you're too exposed. But you let it lie, and you end up with another mountain of problems real quick, and unfortunately, sometimes an auditor to answer to. And finally, sometimes you simply don't need the account or the access at all. Is it necessary? Why even maintain it? So sometimes you prune, sometimes you protect, and sometimes you even use just-in-time access. That might be the answer. So remediation isn't just about protecting active high-risk accounts, it's also about removing the clutter. And at the end of the day, what's the goal? We have to fix the problems we find without breaking everything along the way. So hopefully that helped give everybody a little bit of clarity on what to think about when you're starting to plan out these programs.
Thanks for that, Rita. I want to underline maybe two of the things that you said. The first is as it relates to automation and creating continuity in the program. There's a lot of chat in the chat, I don't know which one works, around machine identities. Right? We can take a lesson from the pages of the folks building and maintaining those, which, by the way, these days, for every one human identity, there are 82 machine identities, and that'll expand. But we can take a lesson from the page of CI/CD pipelines and automation to actually make our programs continuous. The other piece of that is making sure that the path to remediation isn't just one direction, vaulting and rotation. It's important, but to your point, it might be doing things like compliance campaigns. It might be offboarding. It could be migrating to zero standing privileges or just-in-time access. These are perfectly serviceable mechanisms to remediation that take us into environments that might not have worked super well with the vault concept. And Rita, maybe speaking of broader environments, right? Folks' identity programs themselves are now much more broad than they used to be. So how does this plug in to kind of the broader identity landscape?
It's a great question. And the truth is, there's no one solution yet that does everything for everyone, although CyberArk seems to be getting closer and closer to that. But today, we all live in a world where we've invested in many solutions, many processes, many techniques to try to get it right. And I think one important point that I'd like to make is how sharing is caring. And what we've done is we built this concept of an identity catalog where we encourage all to use this catalog for good. Ship inventory and ownership to your IGA. Use it to clean up that CMDB. Heck, we've even seen companies leverage it to clean up their HR systems. The key is for this to be a set it and forget it solution, you have to make sure all your books of record have accurate, consistent, and up-to-date information for their needs and purposes. And it further enforces that good hygiene provides a reliable and a continuous way to keep us all in sync.
I wonder, I know we haven't really talked theoretical, there's practical here too, but there's got to be something that we can do to show maybe more practical evidence of this sort of, I'll call it, this better together story, or finding assistance, or reaching out. Maybe Rita, maybe we've got a case study floating around in the basement or underneath all of the piles of cash that we talked about in chat that we can share with the group.
I love story time. I didn't realize it was already that part.
I think it is story time. I think it is.
All right. So let's talk about a story that we worked on together, BT. And earlier, I actually mentioned that we were going to talk about how we helped get a customer out of a bit of a sticky situation live when they were in the midst of an incident. And I like talking about this case study specifically, not just because we helped this company out together, but because it encompasses a root cause problem that many have. But the driver that this client had for fixing the problem was due to a massive breach. And this can serve as a bit of, this can happen to us. If you need to show senior management what can happen if good hygiene is not proactively part of your plan. So this company specifically, one of the top medical device manufacturing companies in the country, 50,000 employees in 75 countries, 40 plus facilities, and they've grown by over 50 acquisitions over the last 7 years. And they called us on a Wednesday evening and said, can we do a production eval? And we said, of course. They said, can we start now? And we said, absolutely, but are you okay? And after a bunch of NDAs and legal docs, we learned about what was really going on, and we joined forces with your team, BT. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what that company was going through, and then we can jump into how they dealt with this situation.
Yeah, happy to share, Rita. And I think this organization in particular is not unique, but they're unique in their sort of outlook on remediation and just generally hygiene. They sort of sit on the cusp of both healthcare and manufacturing, meaning that the data they protect, the environments they protect, the equipment they protect, isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about protecting safety, both in the healthcare capacity, but also in the manufacturing capacity too. So in this case, the incident caused downtime. Downtime can mean both production issues, in this case, across 50 manufacturing plants globally. But if it goes further downstream, it could mean that equipment starts to malfunction in a healthcare setting. So now we're not just rushing to remediate, but we're rushing to remediate because we have the potential of loss of productivity, but even loss of life. It's a true reality on the manufacturing side of things. As we worked together, we found that the hygiene specifically around, big surprise, non-human identities, but also other privileged accounts was not as up to snuff as it could have been, particularly around documentation, around ownership, and around coverage. This wasn't just causing the problem, it also had the true chance of slowing down remediation efforts. So I know we always think about how am I proactive and how do I respond to breach quickly, but if we didn't find all of these, there's a chance that we are still under a deeper assumption of breach than we would have normally been. So every single one of the concepts that we've shared here applied in this particular instance, and there are many more outside of this one too. Fewer of them see compelling events as we try to be more proactive than reactive in this case. But all the combination of techniques and technologies we've chatted on really helped us to accelerate remediation in this case.
Awesome. And we joined forces with you on that Wednesday night, and maybe we should share, what did we do? What were we able to achieve, right? Well, within the first week, we deployed the solution, ran that intelligent discovery process, and very quickly they were able to inventory all of their accounts and specifically see which accounts were those pesky service accounts that were at the root of this problem. And as we learned earlier today, just knowing which accounts are service accounts isn't enough. You also have to provide visibility into where those accounts have access, whether it's directly or through all those nesting dolls indirectly. And lo and behold, they found that they had a huge blast radius, and some of those service accounts had access to more than 50% of their estate. So we started to learn what we needed to learn, and then we needed to hastily onboard those accounts into CyberArk, but again, without causing even more chaos by doing it haphazardly. So we ran our ownership automation. That's what we did first. We uncovered all of those service dependencies, very important. The owners were notified of the changes about to take place, and the accounts were safely onboarded, and everybody could breathe. Teams stopped working around the clock on those crazy shifts, and they started moving their minds not to containment and stopping the bleeding, but how do I make sure this doesn't happen again? And what was really cool is the company was able to configure our solution for regular scanning. They were able to set up policies to notify them when there were violations to controls. And then reports started to be distributed weekly. And unless an exception was flagged and logged in their system, red flags were raised that violations needed to be addressed immediately. And the company very quickly got to a point where they really embedded identity hygiene into their fabric. And we're so proud of this company because of not just how they handled this incident, but they didn't stop once it was contained, and they appreciated the importance of continuous monitoring. And a little memorable kind of personal / professional moment for me was when I went to visit them about a month or so later. They gave us a tour of their facility, and then they brought us into this big auditorium, and they sat us down and presented us with these coins. And I was told they're called challenge coins. And they give these out to people that have made a very positive difference in their lives. And this was serious because they don't typically give them out to external parties, but they did that for us. And I was just so touched, and a few of us, me included, even shed a tear. But this is a moment that will stay with me forever. So again, I hope I have that experience one or two more times in my career, but it was one I'll never forget.
It's awesome to hear, Rita. And again, seeing the two organizations come together to help them was, well, it was tear-inducing. And I didn't get a challenge coin, so I'm kind of jealous. I do have one. It's a CyberArk one, but that doesn't count, right? I can get those whenever I want to. But no, thanks.
Now I'm going to
Thanks
get
for
people in
deeper
trouble.
dive there, Rita. I know, right? Well, luckily it's anonymous, and hopefully your secret is safe with all of us.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's the end of all of our content for today. So I'm going to hand it off to the moderator for a wrap up. And BT, I want to really thank you for today. This was a lot of fun, a lot more entertaining than the spreadsheets I was working on earlier. And I hope we get to do this again together soon.
Rita, my pleasure entirely. Thanks again for the invite, and as always, fantastic insights, and just really appreciate the partnership and getting to work with all the great people at Sphere. So thank you as well. And of course, all you watching too, thank you for putting up with me, but also learning from Rita over the last almost hour.
I almost want to do a poll to find out how those hoarders jokes landed, but I won't.
We'll have to work that into a reprised version of this, but I think it landed well. It was a very interesting analogy, and I think it's so easily relatable. You know, we all have houses or some dwelling and living in them and thinking of all the stuff that could be packed away. It's like, oh yeah, it's a lot of unknowns in there, a lot of things we forgot about. So thanks for that. You two have been great. It's been a pleasure. You've got a great dynamic between you, both as presenters, but also as your companies, of course. You guys do a great job, and this has been a pleasure. So thanks so much. Okay, I think we have maybe like 2 minutes for one or two questions. Can you guys stick around for that?
Totally.
Okay, so I want to prioritize here. There were quite a few questions around and mentions around AI, so I'm going to pick this question because I think it stitches things together. So what foundational strategies should organizations prioritize to secure every identity, human, AI, and machine across hybrid environments?
Why don't I kick it off? And BT, I know you love this topic, so I'd love for you to chime in as well. But to be honest with you, I think the foundational processes and the way you think about it is the same. You have to know what you have. You have to know information about what you have. You need to know what it can do, who owns it, and if there's a risk, you need to fix it. So for us, the way we built out identity hygiene is agnostic to the type of identity account privileged it might be. So I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's the truth. And BT, I would love for you to chime in here.
No, there's nothing I would add. Right, understanding, prioritizing. Maybe the one component is recognizing that you're not alone. And what I mean by that is if you're dealing with a hybrid environment and you have an Active Directory background and maybe you don't feel super confident with the posture of your cloud environment, it's okay to ask for help, whether it's internally. We see a lot of cases where site reliability engineers will join security for 6 to 8 months to understand what you do, but then also to teach you a little bit about their environments. And of course, folks like CyberArk and Sphere are also happy to be a force multiplier. The worst thing that you can do outside of going into it without any visibility is going into it without any friends to help you out, whether it's internal organizational friends or externals like us.
Okay, I've got another one here. There was a mention about your presentation at Impact, and so they're wondering if there's any highlights you could share from the Find It, Fix It, and Forget About It presentation you did.
Okay, so I'm a jokester. So not only did I do a hoarders theme, but I'm also from Jersey, right? So had a little fun with the Find It, Fix It, Forget About It, right? And just something interesting about the forget about it word is it's not like pretend it doesn't exist or let's ignore it. It's actually about set it and forget it. And we spent a lot of time at Impact educating on how to do that in an elegant way, in a scalable way across a vast amount of scope. And I would say that was probably the highlight for me, kind of educating, talking, preaching about how this is a continuous need, and trying to do this all by hand, very sequentially, is hard, painful, and slow, right?
Yeah.
So I think we did over 250 demos of identity intelligence at Impact, right? So it can be done, I promise, but definitely not with spreadsheets and by hand.
Beautiful. Well, if someone does want a demo or someone wants to follow up as we wrap up here, what's the best next step, or how can they reach out? What should they do?
Well, I love when people send me notes. So by all means, find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, send me an email, Rita.Gurevich, my name, @sphereco.com. It's how I like to talk.
Perfect. And Brandon, any sign off you want to leave the audience with here before we wrap up?
Nothing to add besides my thanks. Really appreciate the time. Thank you for all the questions. And by the way, on a personal note, machine identities are my favorite topic. So y'all made me feel really welcome in the chat. So thanks for starting to focus in on the machines. It's an area that we can't, I'll call it innovate, but also secure fast enough to match the pace. So thank y'all for bringing a smile to my face as it relates to the non-human side of things.
That's great. Thanks for that feedback. And hopefully we'll get to hear more from you around that in the future. So I'd love to have you both back sometime in the future. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, you too. All right, everyone. I know we're just a minute past the hour, so we are going to wrap things up here. Again, thank you to Rita and Brandon for taking the time to share their expertise. Again, thank you to both Sphere and CyberArk for making the magic happen, providing these amazing tools and sharing what's available, what's possible right now around this emerging and evolving topic. And of course, thank you to all of you. As Brandon mentioned, without you in the audience, without your comments, without your feedback, without your curiosity, we wouldn't be here today, and we wouldn't have half the fun that we had and learned as much as we did. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules and being here as well. And with that, we do have one final bit of fun. We are going to give away the most valuable thing, which is information. So remember, we do have the ebook linked in the docs tab there. So if you want to grab that, do grab it now. It's definitely worth your while. And then we also have that $250 Amazon gift card, which I'm going to be giving away now. You do need to be live and present here on the session. So thanks for being here. And without further ado, our winner today is Thiru Krishna from Minnesota. So Thiru, we are going to reach out by email, letting you know how you can collect the prize after we wrap the session. And we will be sending out also some follow-ups from the session. So if you guys want those resources, if you want to watch this session back, if you want to share it with anyone in the industry, someone in your organization, you will be able to do that, and you'll have the link for that. So there we have it. Thank you all very much again. It's been a pleasure. And until another webinar soon, I'm wishing you all an absolutely magical rest of your days. Take care, everybody.